Hello, everybody. This is the Bill Cartwright Show with Steve Cohen, our special guest. He's a motivational speaker, fitness trainer, ordained minister, and trained ballet dancer.
Yep.
Incredible. Robert Brace. Robert, great to be on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And it's great to have this time with you.
It's great. You know, I'm always curious about where people grew up and about their parents. So just tell me where you grew up and tell me a little bit about your parents.
I grew up in London, England, right? London, born and bred.
Wow.
I was born to Ghanaian immigrants in England. My father, eventually they split. My father went back to Ghana, mostly raised by a single mother. And then when I was about 15, I moved. My mother, stepfather, and brothers moved to America. I decided to stay in England. And I stayed with my grandparents, who were old school Africans who had immigrated to London and become an architect. And my grandmother was a fashion designer for African dignitaries.
Just talk about that real quick. Now, I know what an old school person is because that's my parents, very old school. Tell me the old school African parents. What is that like?
Well, I mean, for me, look, they're very strict. They had come to England in the 50s when racism was still, racism exists now, but it's a different level back then. And so they valued education. Every one of their kids and grandkids was going to become a lawyer, a doctor, or whatever. And so when I was living with them, I was supposed to go and do an economics degree. And I said I wanted to go to dance school. And so chaos and mayhem ensued. But on the one hand, they were very strict. But on the other hand, they really gave me a sense of approaching life in a very practical way. And understanding, as immigrants from Ghana, they had both run successful businesses, that just a work ethic and a dignity and a pride in what you do. And even me becoming a minister, there's no coincidence, as I live with my grandparents, they were the center of the community. So when people from Ghana would come over, they would find them housing, find them jobs, make sure they had healthcare and all of that kind of stuff. So they really did set me up for the entrepreneurial route, for who I was, ended up being as a minister, and just having a sense of dignity in whatever you do and fighting against the odds to be successful and build a life that you want.
Tell me about the process of that, how you got there. So tell me a little bit about going to high school, then what you did after high school. I'm not even sure, in fact, about college, but tell me about that process.
Of going from high school. Well, in England, you go from primary school to secondary school. It finishes at 16. So, I mean, in school, I was an athlete. At one point, I was, when I was around 13, 14, I was fastest 200 meters in London. And so I loved athletics. I didn't really get why I was at school in terms of the educational part. I decided to do well because my mother, she was a seamstress. She made 50 pence a dress, 50 cents a dress. And on that salary said she was gonna put me and my brothers through private school. We had no money, but she did it. I watched her do it. So I started to work hard, not because I was interested, but because I was like, if my mother has done this, she at least deserves for me to pay attention and, do what I need to do. So I came out of school with, pretty decent grades. And then you do a 2-year degree. And that's when, after that, you go on to do a full degree. But at that time, I was getting into dance. I did not know that you could have a career as a dancer. And I started to meet people who were doing it. And so I figured I got a scholarship opportunity to a school, and I figured if I don't take this chance now, I'm going to regret it. So I convinced them to let me go for 2 years to get it out of my system. And they did, with much fighting and screaming and, and disappointment. And then I got a scholarship to another school to do a degree. I said, I'm going to do a degree, but it's going to be in dance. So I got a scholarship to do that at one of the best schools in London. And then when they saw me perform, I performed at the Guildhall, which was a well-known theater in London. And they could brag to their friends that their grandson was at the Guildhall and he was dancing in this place where these other performers had danced. Then it started to be okay. And so that was my transition from just school to dancing and the career path I ended up choosing.
Hey, no, I'm sorry, I just want to ask, did you have any mentors or somebody you wanted to dance like?
Nobody right in front of me. I mean, my cousin was I started street dancing before I got into ballet. So my cousin was on like music videos. So he was sort of a mentor. And then I watched the movie, this is going to age me, White Nights with Gregory Hines and Nicole Baryshnikov.
Wow, yeah, good movie.
And I thought to myself, between watching what Gregory Hines was doing and watching what Baryshnikov was doing, and I was like, I want to be like these guys. And so that's a movie I would play over and over and over again, especially in the beginning of my career. So no immediate close mentors except for my cousin. And people I see in the movies.
I was just going to ask, what did you discover in dance that you didn't see in track? Because obviously you were a promising track athlete.
I think, well, it was a couple of things. I think, when I was 13, 14, I stopped growing for a little bit. And so all of my friends just grew. And so I was like the shortest kid in my class for a while. And so physically, I just wasn't able to compete for some reason. And then I grew again at 18. But then I'd always wanted to dance. As a kid, I was always dancing. I was a kid, go dance at the family function, right? And I always had this idea. Another thing that will date me is I used to love
the movie Footloose.
No,
Kevin Bacon.
That's even after that. That's that.
That's Bill's favorite movie.
$6 Million Man. When I was a kid, I'd hear that theme tune and I would run around the dining room table because I figured I wanted to be superhuman, right? And so dance gave me that opportunity when I saw the guys, Baryshnikov and the guys from the Russian companies doing these big jumps and flips. To me, that looked superhuman. And so that's why I got into that. And then once I was into it, the amount of physical intelligence and connection that it takes, especially starting dance so late, to make those connections and change your body in that way, I became an obsession for me. So once I got the feeling and then my body was able to do these things that seemed superhuman, I was hooked.
Can you talk about how long you danced? Can you talk about what were some of the greater performances you thought you were really excited to be there? And then talk about your injury.
Okay. So got to be a soloist at the Metropolitan Ballet in New York, at Lincoln Center, New York. Worked with Graham Greene, a great choreographer. Also got to, as part of the Metropolitan Opera Ballet, sometimes we got to work with the big opera stars. So I got to work with Placido Domingo. Me and him had a part together on stage, and gala performances for PBS, and then dancing with modern companies. I really loved modern dance, and so I got to tour Paris. I got to France and Germany, perform on stages in Paris. So quite a few, highlights. But Metropolitan Opera Ballet was great, especially as a soloist. And then my injury, the first injury, which I still managed to today, happened when I was doing my degree. I was in men's class, and we were doing those big jumps, the superhuman jumps that I talk about. And I landed badly. And I felt something snap in my lower back. And the competitive nature of who I am, and then being in class with these other guys who were awesome, I didn't stop. I went a second time, did this big jump, and I heard it crack again. And by the time I left that class, I couldn't stand up straight. I couldn't bring my chin to my chest, excruciating pain, multiple bulging discs, and then because of some incorrect training in my early career, arthritis in my spine, and some neurological issues in my lower spine. And so this was while I was in school. And so what they said to me was, if you don't, because I was on scholarship, if you don't heal over the summer, you lose your scholarship. And so, which was scary to me because it's the only thing I wanted to do. And so that summer, I went into the body conditioning studio of the school. And from 9 to 5, I deconstructed dance movements, deconstructed my body into the movements that I would need to actually be a performer, and then built them back up again. And so by the time summer came back, I'd healed, but my body was in a much different place even than before the injury. And so I finished out the year and I ended up getting a scholarship to dance at the Alvin Ailey School. And that's what brought me to America. And the principles that I learned in that body conditioning studio from my injury are what I put into my programs, and which became the 28-day challenge program we do now, which is kind of a signature program where we transform people's bodies in 28 days.
So after you came to the States, was that a different type of dancing, different kind of performance?
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, it was still modern dance and ballet, but learning Alvin Ailey's technique, Horton, was a new challenge. It was exciting. But the principles, the basic body movement principles were still the same. I guess being in New York, it is the most competitive city in the world. And so you're up against many more competitors. And so that was a challenge, but it was also something that made me better. So I appreciate that part of my career.
Talk about a great performance that you had there where you were really excited.
It's got to be the Metropolitan Valley. Like I was a soloist there, and you know, there's nothing like being in Lincoln Center with a packed house. The curtain goes up, and you are the only person on stage. That, you know what I mean? Like for a guy from London who started late, you know. It's awesome. And then obviously the applause is great. And then the team being on PBS was great. But as a performer, to take the stage and be the only person, you know, there were people on the stage, but they were static. But me being the only person to take the stage and the whole audience focused on me, you know, you can't beat experiences like that.
Okay, so now you're getting ready to finish dancing. What are you thinking?
Well, the way that happened there's no way that I planned it. I had been volunteering at a performing arts ministry. One of the things I always wanted to do was help change people's lives, right? I thought I could change people's lives through art and through dancing. But as my career was going, I saw I was having a great time, but you know, it was limited. I was working with the performing arts ministry, volunteering, wanted to meet people. I was always on a spiritual quest. And so I started leading a small group and started seeing people's lives change. My small group became bigger, and I got more and more involved in the ministry. And the turning point came when one of those performances, I was on stage. It was a gala performance. At the time, Giuliani was mayor, and it was, again, being televised, audiences clapping. And in that moment, which I should have been just focused on the moment, I was thinking about people who were in the ministry and what I needed to do for those people who I was helping. And it scared me because I thought, whoa, this is not part of the plan. But right about that time, they offered me an interning position. And so I explored it, and that went well. My group continued to grow. And then they offered me a full-time position. And by that time, I knew this was something I wanted to do. Now, I thought they were going to put me in a performing arts ministry, which is what, you know, I figured that's only natural. I'm a dancer, I'm a performer. This is where I've been. This is where my training has been. But they sent me to Harlem. And so they sent an English-speaking ballet dancer to Harlem. And I was like, I'm going to get destroyed. And the guy who was there before me was from Harlem, came up in Harlem, knew the community. And then here I go. The guy who was training me, he came down to see one of my last performances, right, at Lincoln Center. So they said, yeah, you got to go get to know this guy. You're going to be training him up in Harlem. And so this is a guy from Harlem. He comes down. I'm on stage in Lincoln Center in a loincloth, right, bed chest, jumping around the stage in a ballet costume. And he didn't tell me this at the time, but he called the other guys. He's like, no, I don't think this is the guy you want to send up to Harlem to help these people. But you know, it was tough at first, but it was a great education. I met my wife there. We ended up leading their Harlem ministry there, growing that ministry. And it was, you know, the first shot I got, I would say, at true leadership and being able to speak to an audience, which really is what I love doing now. Is love speaking to people to inspire, uplift, and you know, help them become better. So it turned out to be a great experience. It was tough, but it was great.
Why was it tough, and why and how were you able to overcome their resistance?
Well, I mean, it was tough first and foremost because, you know, you hear my accent now, like back then it was even thicker. And here I am in Harlem. First of all, when I got up to speak, people hardly couldn't understand what the heck I was saying. And secondly, I think empathy as a performer and an athlete, there's just really tunnel focus kind of vision you have. And because you're competing, you try not to accept weakness in yourself. You don't accept it in others. And so when you come into a ministry situation and you're speaking to people in that way, it doesn't work because you have to meet people where they're at. And so that was a tough lesson for me to learn that you really got to put yourself in people's shoes, show empathy, show compassion to be able for them to end up listening to you, right? And the more that I learned to do that, I had one minister who said, listen, man, you've got all of these talents and that's great, but people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And people don't care about what you've done until they know that you actually love them. And so that was a big lesson for me to learn. And it's actually the philosophy I use on the gym floor when I'm here in the studio and building a community here in the studio, is that everybody has to hear their name. Everybody has to feel empathy. Everybody has to hear some word of encouragement every time they walk in these doors, right? Because people are going through a lot of stuff and everybody has a story. So for me, those were tough lessons, but once you see how people respond and how it helps people, you know, there's nothing like that. And plus, look, they would see these old Harlem church ladies and they would pull me aside. They'll be like, baby, you can't speak to people that way. You can't come up in here with your English ballet attitude and think it's going to work. So that I learned some of my best lessons from the old church ladies sitting in the back of the pews who would pull me aside and school me after a sermon or after or some interaction.
Yeah, that would be my question to you is what are some of the questions that the younger people have as opposed to somebody who's a little more seasoned, like your older ladies in the back?
Oh, you mean that the younger people in the church?
Yeah, what are their concerns compared to the elder concerns?
I think from what I experienced, I'm trying to crystallize it because there's a lot of different things that, you know, we dealt with everything from addiction to young marrieds to teens. But in my time in the ministry, everybody when they're approaching life wants to kind of figure out, we want a sense of certainty, that if I do X and Y, Z is going to happen. And because of that anxiety, especially in the inner city ministry like Harlem, people are dealing with life's stresses, and people have seen, and again, not everybody was struggling. I do not want to paint that picture. We had some very influential people in our ministry, but for the most part, people want to know that because I'm from this background, because this has been my experience, can I transcend that experience, right? And has my path been laid out for me just because of where I'm from, the family I was born into, the city or area that I grew up in? And it's helping people understand that no, especially even in my story, right? I started dance late. I was not from a background where people were in the arts. It was looked down upon. And so I've been able to transcend in some way, and then helping people have the spiritual tools that they need to understand that if you can look beyond your circumstance and look beyond, what you already have, the strength, the faith, the hope, the know-how that you already have what you need to succeed. And helping people shine a light on the goodness, the greatness, and the giving spirit within them so that they can transcend when they go out into the world.
I'm a big believer in physical exercise and being mentally prepared. When you talk to people, how do you get them to want to work out and create a balanced life?
I think that's definitely two questions there. I think you got to, for us, we try to shine a light on what they could be. And I said earlier, the goodness, the greatness, and the giving spirit. Everybody has done something good. There are people, everybody listening, there's somebody who is grateful for you because they've been on the receiving end of your kindness, right? So there's a goodness inherent in everybody. There's a greatness. Everybody has some talent, whether it's big or small, right? And there's also a giving spirit, something within you that wants to give to others. So that's who you are. Your physicality, the temple that holds that spirit should reflect that, right? So your body should support the spirit, the goals, the ambition that's inside of you. And then on the physical side, anytime somebody does something that they improve, me and the team here will highlight it. We'll talk about it. Because people are like, it's just a little thing, but we celebrate every single little victory. So that's from the physical side, right? And then they see what we've done with other clients and that inspires them. But on the life balance side, that's a good question because it's something we've been discussing a lot recently. See, the concept of balance, and I'm a Libran, implies that there's something on each side, right? Something that balances out on each side. But in life, as you know, to play at the level you played at, sometimes balance is not functional to help you hit those goals. Sometimes it needs to be a moment of extreme focus and extreme attention, right? And so instead of balance, we like to talk about harmony, because you've got to keep all of the notes playing in the different areas of your life. And usually it's not just two, it's many different areas. And so how are you with sleep? How are you with your relationships? Are you fulfilled at work? How does that work with your physicality, your nutrition, your friendships, right? So people live a more harmonious life, where sometimes things are more extreme, right? Sometimes there's a crescendo in one area and the music gets quieter over here, but then, the melody kicks in. And so that's more of how we try to help people see their lives. Because for me, in a balance, some things I'm not going to put my kids on the scale. If there's something with my kids, that's it. It's not on the scale, right? Those are the bass notes that are underneath the music that's always playing. So it's about trying to help people see their life more as harmony than just this binary scale.
Hey, is there a balance of of young people doing ballet as far as their being ethnic or not?
Oh, I think that's improving with people like Misty Copeland. I've been lucky enough to be able to study at Alvin Ailey and the Dance Theatre of Harlem. So I think it is opening up now. Ballet traditionally has not been a place for people of color. And with Misty Copeland and what she's been able to accomplish, I think that it's being open to more people. The attitudes towards body and race still exist. But you know, it's improving, and it's a question of access. You know, it's to do ballet costs money. To do ballet, look, when I first started, and I wasn't telling my grandparents what I was doing, I would travel all the way across town. I'd tell them I was going to the library. I'd travel all the way across town to a synagogue basement on the other side of town, and I was, you know, almost 6 foot black guy, and the rest of the people in my class were like 12-year-old, 13-year-old Jewish girls in this neighborhood, right? So, you know, I had to go really search it out and find it. So I think it's definitely changing, but I think more needs to be done there.
I know Robert well, and obviously I'm a big fan of Robert's, and he's inspired me, you know, and he's doing so many amazing things. I don't know if you've touched upon the mind-body-soul connection and how does that work? Yeah.
Right.
And your app is amazing.
Yep. Oh, thank you. So yeah, in terms of mind, body, soul, listen, when it comes to mind, body, soul, all of us want the same things, right? So, quote unquote, spiritual qualities, love, joy, peace, a sense of self-control, connection to other people, right? And so those are the soul level qualities that everybody's looking for. Now, when you move, your body is designed that it will give you those qualities. You move, you produce serotonin, which gives you a sense of joy. You move, your endorphins go up, right? Which give you a sense of peace and take the edge off your stress. Also, when you move with intensity, your body produces endocannabinoids, which is the root ingredient of cannabis. So the bliss hormone, it actually helps you feel more bliss. Your breathing brings down your heart rate and gives you a sense of peace, right? All of these things that you get, the joy, the peace, the sense of calm, taking the edge of stress, self-control, right, as spiritual qualities. And that's, for me, is when the mind, the body, and the soul connect. In the ancient Jewish tradition, there's a word called kavod. And we've all heard the phrase, your body is your temple. What kavod means is it either means weight, physical weight, or it means a divine presence with gravitas, right? And so the ancients would build their temple to reflect the gravitas of the spirit that was within the temple, right? And so we all have a center of gravity, a gravitas, a kavod, in terms of our talents and what we have to offer. And so as we build our temple, it should reflect that kavod, that gravity, that spirit within us. And that's how the mind, the body, and the spirit connect. And in our app, we are bringing all of those things together. And so our app is the first app that tracks your mind, body, and soul engagement, right? So we have mental motivations, we have workout classes, we have meditations and breathing exercises for your soul. And so it's designed so that everybody can live a daily lifestyle where you're getting either 5 minutes of each of these, or you can go full on in and do our challenges where we've got live workouts for an hour, from ballet to our 28-day challenge. So you really get to live the mind, body, and soul lifestyle. And that's on the Brace Life app. You can get it at thebracelife.com, thebracelife.com, free for 14 days to try it out.
If it's good enough for Wyclef and Mike Corrini,
oh yes,
Jr., it's good enough for me.
So yes,
yeah, Bill's got to try it. Yeah,
Wyclef has seen what we're doing, and he's making some custom music for our workouts. Michael Rainey Jr., he works out in the studio. I was introduced to him through Steve, and he's, you know, we've got some working together some work in the mix coming up with us and him.
I know you got to go, but I just have one last question, and then Bill, I'm sure, has a question. But basically, I just wanted to say, why are you able to take people, and I've seen you have them lose 40 pounds, 50 pounds, you know, and really transform them? What makes you able to do it where others can't, you know?
I think two things. I think, like I said, it starts with the individual. I think what I learned in the ministry and how to connect with people and how to help people see the best in themselves and then live up to that potential is just how we start and approach every situation. And then with the physical know-how in terms of transforming bodies, what I began to learn in that body conditioning studio with my own injury, where I felt broken, where I felt afraid, where I felt like I couldn't move, and to be able to transform myself and exceed where I was before, that technical know-how and that body connection is what I put into my programs and helps people transform. So that 1-2 punch.
Before we leave, talk about your family a little bit. You mentioned your wife.
Yeah, I've got a wife, beautiful wife. Married 20 years this year. She was a model, and now she runs a behavioral therapist agency. So 2 entrepreneurs in the family, 2 beautiful daughters. One's going to college, looking to go to college for volleyball. 17, she starts next year. And I got an 11-year-old daughter. So I'm outnumbered in my household, but you know, it's a good thing.
Awesome. Well, Robert, thank you so much for being on. You're a very unique, talented person. And I tell you what, I would love to, well, for one thing, to meet you. And then
Absolutely.
You would really inspire a lot of our students here at USF. You know, you had a great story.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, I would love to. I'd love anywhere I can inspire and help. That would be awesome. Oh, thank you for having me on. I appreciate you guys. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for this time.